Hi, I'm Carol Bowden. I'm so glad you could join me this morning. And also joining me, a very special guy named Vic Miller. He is a retired Marine. Very special guy. And he's also chairman of the Wayne County Veterans Services Advisory. And I tell you what, that says a lot, Vic. You too, a lot. And I've worked with you on a couple of different things now, and just so proud to have you here this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
We've got something really cool to talk about today, and there are probably a lot of people that civilian-wise don't think about it until you remind them. But today is, well, actually tomorrow, but as you pointed out, if you're somewhere over in Japan right now, it's today, 69th anniversary of the landing on Iwo Jima.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's just, I'm so glad that you and I got a chance to talk so we could bring this to our listeners. So tell us more, please.
You know, it was such a long time ago, and that's why a lot of people tend to forget about what happened. And I like to remember because, one, my grandfather, James Bruman, served in the United States Navy during the Pacific Island campaign. And every time I talk to him, I thank him, and he just kind of laughs. But that was that generation. They didn't want to be recognized for it. They just wanted to do their job and go home. And I think it's just a huge part of our history because I truly believe either one, we'd be speaking probably a different language if we didn't fight both wars in Europe and in the Pacific. But we lost so many American lives during this campaign. It's just unbelievable. And
unfortunately, you're right. Time kind of eases those wounds for those who didn't have a connection, and we do tend to forget. And those lives don't need to be in vain. We don't need to forget. You're right. The freedoms that they allowed us are greater than most people realize.
Yes, absolutely. And I believe forgetting or not thinking about or not even honoring those is almost like a slap in the face for these.
I agree. So let's do that. Let's honor them. First of all, let's talk about the number of lives lost.
Just on the island of Iwo Jima alone, 6,821 American lives were lost just on the Battle of Iwo Jima. And that's one of the three biggest battles that fought during that campaign. The other one was in Okinawa and Saipan. And Saipan, I have to throw that out there once again. My grandfather, he's still 91 years old and kicking.
Wow.
So
91.
And you know what's funny? I got to throw this out there. My grandfather's 91, and he lives in a retirement home in Wasilla, Alaska. And I was talking to him yesterday, and he had to get off the phone because he had a lunch date.
Oh, my goodness.
91. And you know what? He's like the playboy of the retirement home. It's funny. You know, because naturally women live longer than men. And you got it. It's funny. But he goes, at 91, I'm still walking around, and I drive. Key thing, and I drive. So you know what? All the ladies want to go to have dinner or lunch with me.
Sure they do. Sure they do. Good for him.
So God bless him, you know.
Without a doubt. And you said something, you know, that you thank him every time that you talk to him. And I think that's really cool.
I think it's important. I think it's important if you see, even to this day, even more now than in the past 5-6 years than I ever have, if I see someone wearing a retired Air Force, Marine, Navy, Coast Guard, Army hat, or even if it says Vietnam veteran or Desert SEAL, Desert Storm, even if we want to go not that far back, but Korean War, especially if you see someone with a Korean War or World War II, you know, they're dying off at a rapid pace. And it's unfortunate, but it's life, I guess.
It is. And you're right. It's so important, and it doesn't take but just a moment to say thank you. Exactly. You don't have to say anything else. Just walk up to them, touch them on the arm, shake their hand, say thank you.
Exactly, and that's what I do. And like I said, I've been doing it more and more over the past. I think as I was getting closer to retirement, and maybe I was just growing up, maybe maturing. I don't tell my wife that, but I was growing up. But you know, you're right. It doesn't take much out of your time to go over and say. And not only that, but when someone is at that age, they just want someone to talk to. And I could say this from personal experience, getting through some of the memories that you've had, the best therapy for this is to talk to someone who's been through similar situations or someone who's served. And that's the best therapy. And I know a lot of psychiatrists out there in Wayne County or in the VA are probably going, no, don't say that. But it is. It really is. So.
Well, because you've got to be able to relate to people that can relate to you. You know, it's one thing for all of us who've never seen one moment of hostile action or even being away from our families in foreign countries, protecting what some back home don't think is necessary.
Exactly. And, you know, and back to this, when you talk about the vast amount of American lives that we lost in the Pacific Island Campaign, the Pacific Island Campaign lasted from 1941 to 1945 until the Japanese surrendered. So that's about 4 years of being at war, to include being at war over in Europe during World War II. It's just amazing. Just to throw some dates out at you, we had the Battle of Wake Island in December of 1941, and then Midway in 42, Tarawa in 43, Saipan in 44, and Tinian, which is in July through August of 1944. And I just want to, real quick out there, I was on the island in Tinian 50 years later in the fall of 1994. And I took some pictures, and this is before internet. I was on a deployment, and I got back later on that year in 1995. I was up visiting my grandfather, and I showed him some pictures, and he looked at me, and he just couldn't believe them. He was like, I was on that beach. He goes, when we dropped the Marines off on that beach, it gave me goosebumps.
That's
I know,
what
I'm
you
looking
just
at,
did to me.
you know,
oh, my God.
And it's just amazing. But I just have to throw that out there. Tinian, July to August of 1944. And then we had Iwo Jima, obviously, February 19th to the 23rd of this month, 69 years ago. And then we had Okinawa in 1945. So you just think about, and that's just to name a few. That's not to include all the operations, the Bataan Death March, the battle in the Philippines, fighting China, and that's just tip of the iceberg. But those of you out there just want to just Google the Pacific Island Campaign, and there's just a plethora of information out there. It's mind-boggling. I mean, I didn't have enough time to sit here and write down every campaign because, one, you don't want to leave out a campaign because you don't want to not honor those who've served and those who've lost their lives in some of these battles. But on the same token, it's just, we'd be here all day. And not that I wouldn't mind talking about it, but I'm sure your listeners might be, okay.
That's enough. No. I really think that one thing that you stated, that as you get older, and especially the last 4 or 5 years, things become more important to you. And it just means so much more to make certain that you remember and that you talk to people who have served as you have. I think that's the case throughout the nation right now. I think that people are finally getting the fact that we've got to remember these things. We can't let this information die and be forgotten in some textbook.
No, you're absolutely right. We can't. I talked to a lot of veterans, being part of the veteran groups, the Wayne County Coalition, Patriots Coalition, and I talked to just regular people at the store, and it's surprisingly, and it's almost kind of sad to people that don't know. I had the honor of talking to the 8th graders over at St. Mary's School. Then my daughter goes to St. Mary's. And I talked to the 8th graders, and I talked to them about Iwo Jima. I talked to them about the Pacific Island Campaign. I mean, I didn't go into details. Obviously, they're 8th graders. The look on their face, they wanted to learn, and I told them, I says, you know what, you want to surprise your grandparents, you want to surprise your aunt and uncles, or, the veteran that you see at the grocery store, surprise them with tidbits of knowledge. And the look on a veteran's face when you say, hey, you know what, thanks for serving, or two, if you remember a specific date, you want to blow someone's mind. If you're in today's youth in elementary school and you go up to a veteran, if you go up to someone and say, hey, I remember 69 years ago today, you can just look on their face and be like, wow. It's a sense of pride almost,
It is. It's a sense of pride for them, and that somebody cared enough to educate themselves.
Exactly.
Wow.
So, and they were so eager to learn, and they're such a patriotic school, and I got to hand it out. They were just so happy, and they're so receptive of it. I was just an absolute honor to be able to speak to them.
Well, I hope that's something that all of our schools will do more of, because we've got a great base of veterans here that would love nothing more than to be able to tell the stories, not only of current wars and conflicts that we've been in, but the history.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that's a great thing. So heads up to all the teachers and administrators that might be listening for Wayne County Public Schools or even our private schools. Hey, we've got to take a quick break. WGBR News Talk time is 8:47. We'll be back with Vic Miller right after these messages. Time is 8:50. You're back with Newsmakers. Carol Bowden here with my friend Vic Miller, chairman of the Wayne County Veterans Services Advisory. More important than that, retired Marine Corps, and just somebody who's reminding us today, just never forget any of the men or women that have served, and over 6,900, did you say? Over 6,000 on the island.
6,821 American lives were lost on the island. And I say American lives because it wasn't all Marines. And I got to throw this, there was a lot of Navy. The Navy dropped us off on the island, but I got to say this from my good friend Bill Graham out there. God bless him.
Good morning, Bill.
Yeah, good morning. And I know he unfortunately couldn't be here with us this morning. So, and Bill, I'm coming to see you after this. So I hope you're listening. So put on the coffee. But the Seabees were on it, and he was a former Seabee in Vietnam, and I looked this up, and I was like, and I wanted to research how many Seabees and what units were on there, and the reason why the Seabees were on Iwo Jima and landed with the Marines were because they wanted to build airstrips. It was like a focal point for the United States to land their bombers, the B-52s, on Iwo Jima because it was too far to fly from wherever they were before.
Right.
So the Seabees landed, and the Seabee units were 31st, 62nd, and 133rd Seabee Battalion. So I just want to say thanks, Bill, and all your buddies out there. And you want to talk about something astronomical amount of power and thought that went into this campaign. And just for that Battle of Iwo Jima alone, there were 450 ships. 450, Carol. I don't think we can imagine.
Whoa, no.
Can you imagine looking out? And, Iwo Jima's not that big. It's about 5 miles long and probably about a mile and a half wide. So it's not that big. It's not even that big.
No.
So can you imagine 450 ships looking out on being a Japanese soldier, looking out going, oh, darn,
Oh, no.
And, and they bombarded the island for days prior to the Marines landing. And not only that, but for them to be dug in. But then again, the Japanese army had quite a long time to dig themselves and bury themselves in this volcanic island. And the tallest point of this island is about 550 feet. And that's the volcanic of the top of the island, Mount Suribachi.
Goodness.
And if you ever look at the memorial, either in Harlingen, Texas, or in Washington, D.C., the original one is in Texas, actually, the one of the
I did
memorial.
not know that.
Yeah. You know what? I actually had the pleasure of seeing it when I was stationed in San Antonio. It's 5 Marines and 1 Navy corpsman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and little fact, 3 of the Marines that raised the flag, because granted, a lot of people, this is a big misconception too, though. Yeah, it took us 4 days just to get to the top of Mount Suribachi, but we still had weeks of still battle for clearing tunnels and clearing the island of the Japanese soldiers. So it wasn't just 4 days. The battle just didn't last 4 days. It lasted up to a week or two.
And people don't realize that because they had prepared for this for so long.
Oh, yes. They were dug in like an Alabama tick, I guess. Sorry about that. for those for the Southerners out there, I had to throw that out there. Yeah. But there were 3 Marines that died within a few days after that, and there was only 2 Marines and a Navy corpsman that survived that were in that picture. And we all know Ira Hayes, the Indian from Arizona. Renee Gagnon was another one, and the Navy corpsman was John Bradley. And so, just to throw names out there, it's just a little tidbit of information.
But you're sharing information that, I can say that you've told me some things I didn't even know, and that's why I love to go back and study certain things. But you're kind of like an encyclopedia for me right now this morning. So,
well, if you actually look at the memorial, there's 13 hands, and there was only 6 people putting the flag up in there, but there's 13 hands. And from my understanding, I might be wrong on this, and I know there might be some veterans out there that might be cringing when I say this, but I believe the 13 hand is the hand of God, and that's the reason why they put it out there. So, and I might be wrong. I doubt it, but I'm pretty sure.
If you're wrong, you erred in a great way, because that's a beautiful thought right there. So, yeah. And unfortunately, our time does get short here, so we want to talk about some things as much as we could go on talking about the Pacific campaign. There's some things going on now that we need to talk about, and the Veterans Coalition and everything that's happening is so strong in Wayne County and in the surrounding areas. So tell us some of the stuff you've got happening.
We are actually, our next meeting, and I invite all veterans out there, or if you know of a veteran that might be having some issues or might having some backlog issues with their claims, or just want to sit in on one of our meetings, our next meeting is at the Veterans Service Office off of 2001 East Ash Street here in Goldsboro. It's going to be this Thursday at noon. And we're going to have a couple of guests. We're going to have a guest from Fayetteville. He is trying to build a getaway up in Yanceyville. So we're going to talk about some interesting issues. We're also going to, because it's our first meeting since before the holidays.
Oh my goodness!
Oh yeah,
you got a lot to talk about.
So we have something to talk about. And then the other thing I'm actually kind of proud of, and I got to throw this out there, and I got to thank Bill Pate for working so hard and helping me out on this. He actually did most of the work, but we actually have pamphlets that we completed now that we're going to be putting out the Veterans Service Office. And once again, that address is 2001 East Ash Street. And we're also going to be putting out pamphlets out at the VA outpatient clinic at 2610 or 2610 Hospital Road. And what it is, the pamphlets is more of a one-stop shop. It gives you websites, current and legitimate phone numbers, because we all know how frustrating it is to call someone in the government and be like, oh, I'm sorry, that number no longer works, or that person no longer works here. But it's an updated roster of points of contact with the VA, the DAV, of anything that might be veteran-related that can help you out. So
that's so important. And we're going to actually have some of those pamphlets here when you get a chance.
Yes, and I'll bring those back. Thank you. And I invite everybody, and if you're a family member or if you're a veteran yourself, please be more than happy to come down and see us, voice your opinion or voice an idea, because we're always looking for things to do or better ways to help our veterans here in Wayne County.
Well, you've had a little stretch since the holidays, and not being able to meet, but do you try to meet monthly?
Yes, we do. Our last meeting was scheduled for the last Thursday of January, but unfortunately for the passing of Kerry Winters, God bless him, and the weather, I took it upon myself to cancel that, talking with a few other veterans, canceling that and moving it to this month.
And I will say that was impressive to see, was the number of veterans that were there that day that we honored.
Absolutely. You
Carrie
know
Linder.
what? Kerry was a huge fan of us, of the veterans, and I love that guy. And I know I speak for everybody here in Wayne County. He was probably the most loved sheriff I've ever seen.
I think you're right.
So, and real quick, I just want to say, if you don't know who's representing your district for the advisory board, please come down, meet all the board members, and you might be surprised. You might be like, the information out there is key, and a lot of people, and that's why we're here, and that's why we're doing this.